going to teach active shooter at a school. And when I think about things that I'm teaching and who I'm teaching it to, and does this align with practicalness? And I of course think it does, because there's no better person that should be available to handle the problem before the police can get there than the person that's already there. So they should be afforded the opportunity to eliminate the threat should that be necessary. I believe that the person who is responsible and required to protect the kids should have the best information possible available to them and the confidence to push forward in situations like this. The average response time in the United States is 8 minutes, and I believe in the Houston area it's 5.5. So there's no better person available to mitigate the threat than the person who is seeing it happen in real time. The first thing I do when I get in front of a group of people is I always commend them for showing up for training, because there's a whole lot more people out there that would rather talk about what they would do in a situation rather than actually putting in the work to discover a basic fundamental understanding of what they're capable of accomplishing. I've trained a lot of people over the years, and what I've found is that the only thing that matters and differentiates them between skill levels is their willingness to continue putting in the work. I mean, and so I would say this is one at least.
Yeah,
this is
those
two.
broke low because when I shot, it was more that instinctual.
Yeah, because you were shooting fast.
Yeah.
Not to say that you were like, I can get away with that because there's a cemetery back there and there's no, so just something to think about and consider.
Yeah.
Kind of getting away from the principle of, find your shot, and whether it's there in time or not. Again, it sounded like you shot fast and you didn't hit him, so those rounds are going somewhere.
Yeah, they were.
And remember, maybe it's okay because there's a field here, but if he's doing that at this room right here,
that's not okay.
Right, now those rounds are going somewhere, so let's try and bring it down a little bit.
Yep.
And think about what we're trying to do, and it's either there or it's not there. If you come up on your sights and you put your dot where it's supposed to be, at that moment you will determine whether or not you have it or you don't. It's hard because you're new and you don't know a lot, so you are thinking about a lot. You're thinking about how you move across doors. Should I open this door? Should I let it breathe? Should I go wide here, right? You're thinking about that stuff. Whereas when I see it, I'm not thinking about it. I see it and then I just adapt to it, where I can think about marksmanship. So try and start doing that. I know it's hard, but if you can, think about marksmanship. Because if you don't, if the time when you think about marksmanship is only when, it's real hard.
Yeah.
Cool? Cool. It's something that you can do after today. Like, I'm an advocate for not wearing my keys on my belt because I can hear you as you move. And otherwise, if you were just a little bit lighter on your feet, you wouldn't even know you were coming. Actual gunfight, when I am, I'm just upright, and then, shooting starts, where do you think I'm gonna go? Right away.
Yeah.
Something like that, which is kind of what you did, right?
Yep.
So we can minimize the effects of doing that if we're already in an aggressive stance. So if I'm moving forward and something becomes a gunfight, I still might do a little bit of something if he's shooting first, right? Obviously, it's hard to get over that, but it's going to be less drastic if I'm already down here. Just to be a little bit more concerned with not so much hiding places initially. Mm-hmm. I understand that we want to check it all, but if you just heard it and you're coming, and there's already a person down, the chances that he's hiding are probably not great, at that point. If he wasn't here and you're in there, and then he's actually down there shooting and you're in here, what does that sound like? Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if we put him in the room at the end and you're in here, bang, you don't know if it came from the cafeteria or it came from a room.
Right, because it's just noise in that vicinity.
Yeah. So maybe we take a little bit more time to do as much as we can from outside before going in. Active shooter training is complete. Stabbed myself. Definitely don't recommend doing that. It's interesting, and I learned something today, something valuable for, I guess not maybe so to speak valuable, but it reinforces kind of this idea of marksmanship that I talk about. It gets a lot of pushback, but as some people know in one of my classes, the whole objective of the class is to induce physiological responses to stress and demand accuracy in the process using simunition in scenarios. I put students through a situation that they're unfamiliar with and essentially test their accuracy. What I thought was going to happen before I started the class, based on the things that I see in videos, is exactly what happened in these instances. Officers got there, things happened in front of them, and taking away everything that makes marksmanship difficult, movement, distance, target availability, or obstructions, the officers basically failed. And why is that? Well, when I have a student that is not an officer, doesn't get the same amount of training, not even held to the same standard, the standard is much lower. When I have a student that's able to do that and beat all the other officers who have taken the classes in this test, what does that tell you about marksmanship? And one of the things that people talk about is every officer needs to be a practical shooter. While that is a great idea, it's not practical and will never happen. Time, money, officers off the street, it's not a practical idea. So it's a conversation, it's a fun conversation. It's a conversation to no end. The point that I'm making here is marksmanship doesn't matter if you never get there. Your hit factor on the street that you see, which is the 15 to 35% nationwide, exists because the vast majority of cops are doing what most cops do in these situations: point the gun and pull the trigger without any regard for applying the fundamentals of marksmanship. So when this person who I just trained is able to put 3 rounds in a group like this from maybe 10 yards with simunition under stress, and no one else has done that, why was he able to do that? But those with more training, more experience, higher standards, not able to do it. The only differentiating factor, and the only thing that matters ever in an engagement, barring you're in such close proximity that you are truly point shooting, is whether or not you arrive at marksmanship, you find your sights, and you pull the trigger with every trigger pull dependent on the behavior of your target, or at a speed depending on the behavior of your target. And in this instance, he was thinking about marksmanship in that moment, and that's why he was able to do that. Regardless of the amount of times he's been shooting, regardless of the standard, regardless of his training, he's able to do that when nobody else has been able to. Again, the only differentiating factor between what he did and what everybody else has not been able to do is that in the moment, while induced with the physiological responses to stress, he was able to apply the fundamentals of marksmanship because he was actually thinking about doing it. Now, did he continue to do that well as we progressed? No, because scenarios and different information and different things happening within the scenario starts to begin complicating the thought process. And when you complicate the thought process, you start taking your mind off what you should be focusing on, which is marksmanship. And it's harder to snap to that than it is to have it at the forefront of your mind. How do we also account for the officers who have shot less and have been engagements and maybe shot 1 time or 2 times and hit the target? Most of them also not being, the best shooters out there in terms of drills and times and things like that. Why were they able to do it? Cops are doing it without the practical shooting aspect, and this person was also able to do it without all of those things. If you want to fix the hit factor in marksmanship, you got to stop officers from unnecessarily shooting with emotion. Because if you get to the point where marksmanship matters and you find your sight, and depending on the behavior of the target, with every trigger pull, you are continuously finding your sight, bang, is he still there, bang, is he still there, you are going to end up shooting the appropriate amount of times based on what you're seeing. You can shoot all you want on the range, spend all the hours you want, but as I've shown officers, that all the training on the range doesn't necessarily mean that you will perform to at least the range standard while induced with the physiological responses to stress.